Right now, something strange is happening in the Zombies universe, and if you've been paying attention to the story clues, the seasonal events, and even the content being added to the game, it starts pointing toward one very likely outcome: the return of classic Zombies locations. Not just remakes for nostalgia, but the return of older maps as part of the story itself. To understand why this is probably coming, we need to look at what the current narrative is actually building toward. The modern Zombies storyline really began with the collapse of the multiverse at the end of Call of Duty, Black Ops 4. In that moment, the characters destroyed the entire multiverse in order to break the endless cycle of timelines repeating. Every alternate reality, every different branch of history, was wiped out and compressed into one surviving universe. But the destruction of those universes didn't completely erase them. Instead, the remnants of those timelines were pushed into a dimension known as the Dark Ether. The Dark Ether isn't just a place full of monsters, it's more like a storage zone for broken realities. When the multiverse collapsed, every timeline that was destroyed left fragments behind. Those fragments, locations, creatures, technology, were essentially dumped into the Dark Ether. For years in the story, that dimension stayed mostly sealed off. But in the modern era of zombies, starting with Call of Duty, Black Ops Cold War, and continuing into Call of Duty, Black Ops 7, the barrier between our world and the Dark Ether has been weakening. Scientists opened portals. Military factions experimented with dimensional energy, and now those fractures are beginning to appear naturally across the world. The current Warzone event with the Red Breaches is the clearest example of this. These aren't controlled portals like the ones researchers used in the past. They're uncontrolled dimensional ruptures appearing directly inside battle zones. That means the boundary between universes isn't just being opened anymore, it's breaking. And this is where things get really interesting for Zombies fans. Because if the Dark Ether contains the remnants of destroyed timelines, then every breach becomes a doorway not just to monsters, but to pieces of those lost universes. Entire locations could theoretically reappear. This idea actually lines up perfectly with what we're seeing in Call of Duty, Black Ops 7 already. The game has been quietly reintroducing content from older titles across multiple modes. Weapons from the Black Ops 2 era have been showing up again. Multiplayer maps from that time period have returned. Even camos and visual elements from Black Ops 4 are appearing inside the current game. That pattern tells us something important. Treyarch is already pulling assets, designs, and ideas from across the franchise's history and bringing them into Black Ops 7. From a gameplay perspective, that's a celebration of past games. But from a story perspective, it fits perfectly with the Dark Ether concept. Because the Dark Ether is literally a graveyard of past timelines. And if the dimensional fractures keep getting worse, it would make complete sense for fragments of those older realities to start leaking back into the world. Not as simple remakes, but as pieces of destroyed universes resurfacing. What's even more interesting is that we're already seeing this idea in action inside the new Zombies experiences. In Ashes of the Damned, several areas clearly resemble classic Zombies locations that fans recognize. One example is Exit 115, which strongly resembles the diner area from Black Ops 2. Another area, Ashwood, appears to be heavily inspired by the map Buried, and Farm from Black Ops 2 is also included. These locations aren't direct one-to-one remakes. Instead, they feel like distorted echoes of the originals, almost as if pieces of those maps have resurfaced in a different reality. That fits perfectly with the idea that fragments of destroyed timelines are beginning to leak out of the Dark Ether. Instead of fully recreating old maps, the story can reinterpret them as dimensional remnants, locations that once existed in other universes now appearing again in broken or altered forms. Imagine a future Zombies map where parts of different classic locations exist together. A hallway that feels like something from Kino der Toten connected to a landscape that resembles Origins. Structures from older maps appearing as dimensional debris from the multiverse collapse. This would allow Treyarch to bring back beloved locations while still keeping the current storyline intact. Instead of rebooting the story, they would simply explain those maps as fragments of the old multiverse that survived inside the Dark Ether. And the story events happening right now suggest we might be moving toward exactly that kind of scenario. The arrival of Paradox Junction is especially important here. A paradox junction is a place where multiple conflicting timelines intersect. If the Zombies story is introducing locations where different versions of reality overlap, that means the walls separating timelines are weakening. In other words, the universe is becoming unstable. If Paradox Junction destabilizes the timeline further, the result could be large-scale dimensional bleed. Entire environments from previous eras could begin manifesting again, And suddenly, classic Zombies locations wouldn't just be returning for nostalgia. They would be returning because pieces of those destroyed timelines are physically reappearing. When you combine the Dark Ether lore, the ongoing Red Breach events, the introduction of Paradox Zones, and the fact that Black Ops 7 is already bringing back weapons, camos, and multiplayer maps from earlier games, it starts to look less like coincidence and more like setup. The game is already pulling pieces from across the franchise. The story is about a dimension filled with the remains of those past timelines. And the world of Zombies is currently experiencing massive dimensional fractures. Put all of that together, and the idea of classic Zombies maps returning suddenly becomes more than just a fan wish. It becomes the most logical direction the story can take.